What was it like when you earned the name Doc? So when you get called Doc as a medic, that's a big deal. Like, you stop calling them by their rank. You stop calling them by their name. It's not, hey, Conaway. It's not, hey, expletive, whatever. It's Doc. Where's Doc? What's that like when you get that?
Oh, man, that was, I think it happens. And when it happens, you're so ingrained in the platoon and the brotherhood within that platoon that you don't really, where I'm working now at Fort Benning, I'm not called Doc anymore.
Right.
And so now I've really picked up on how much I don't want to say enjoyed it, but it was like a level of respect that you don't see anywhere else.
Yeah.
And you start to understand, man, these guys weren't just doing this because they do it on movies.
Right.
But there was this trust.
Welcome to the Leading with Vulnerability podcast. I'm your host, Yuma Barnett, and today my guest is Zach Conaway. I've known Zach now for many years, dating all the way back to our times in Savannah. We never served in the same company, but we served alongside each other there, and then we reunited at 3rd Ranger Battalion, where he was the senior medic, and I was a company first sergeant. We spent a lot of hours together there inside of a jock looking at TV screens. Zach's a Ranger medic. That's something that you train extensively for, and you hope you never have to use your skills to save somebody's life. And we'll delve into a little bit of that stuff. But Zach's just a great guy. He's got a great story. He's the guy in the platoon that can always find something if you need it, right? If you need a cup of coffee, or he'll come back with a whole coffee maker, and you just don't ask where it came from. That's the type of guy Zach can be. So I'm happy he took the time to come on the podcast this morning, and I'll pass it off to him.
Yeah, I appreciate that. It's an honor to be here. I'm married to Sarah Conaway. I have 3 children: Gabriel, my oldest; Nora, and Caroline, my youngest. I come from Western North Carolina, just east of Asheville, Winston-Salem area. I had a great childhood. My parents, they were awesome in the way that they raised us. Was I would say different, more old school. And then my brother, man, I've really continue to lean on my brother. Even now, he's been, we're thick as thieves. And coming from North Carolina, it was Grandpa, my grandfather. He probably had the most influence on us. He was the type of guy that when he spoke, everyone got quiet and everyone was listening.
Yeah, everybody listens, right? One of those type.
Yeah, exactly. And he rarely spoke. So if he had something to say, then it was paramount. I mean, he was going to influence everybody. From high school, baseball was a lifestyle for us. I had a dad who played baseball for a while. Me and my brother, he was the pitcher, I was the catcher. So we went pretty far with it. I went to college. While I was at college, I really hadn't, because of the sheltered lifestyle that I had as a child, around 14, 15, I started getting really rebellious. And then I had all that freedom in college. And when I got down to college, I was making great grades in honor college for the first 2 years. And after my sophomore year, I just, from academic probation to getting in trouble to, you name it.
Yep.
I got into it.
That's funny, and that's not a unique story. You could go to any company in the Army and find that your story about, I tried college and had a little too much fun there, so I had to go grow up in the Army. Is that kind of what you had to do?
Oh, that's exactly it. Like an eviction notice on your. It wasn't an eviction notice because Mom and Dad were going to help out, but it was a realization that I needed to start making my own money and start making my own way,
right?
Or I was going to end up behind bars or in a ditch somewhere.
Yeah. So from baseball in college, decided to join the Army. What was that? What led you to the Army and then choosing to be a medic? How did that all play out?
Wow, so what led me to the Army was the fact that I was so undisciplined. I came from a very disciplined, structured family life to college where I didn't do anything.
Right.
And then, to be honest with you, I think it was just I'll try this.
Yeah.
And the medical thing, that was unique. My grandfather died of a brain tumor. And when he died when he was 13, I always thought I was going to be a doctor because I was so angry. I remember at that age being so angry that my grandfather had died and those doctors couldn't fix it. So I want to be a neurologist or a neurosurgeon. And that's what I was at school for, was pre-med.
Oh, really?
And so that going into the Army, my initial intent was to become a doctor.
Yeah.
Through the Army, get my schooling complete. And while I was at AIT to be a medic, I can't remember if it was a recruiter. No, I was an option 40. I was an option 40.
You came in option 40, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know how.
Yeah.
But then I got to airborne training. It seemed pretty easy, and then these Tambourine dudes picked us up, and I was like, "What?" And my mom was crying because she saw me running away with these guys that were screaming at me.
Oh yeah, your mom was at airborne graduation, and then they come and grab you from there, and you go straight to RASP.
Yeah,
right?
Gonzo picked us up.
Oh really?
Gonzo and this mortarman that was built like a brick house, and they were yelling at us.
Oh yeah,
doing the standard thing. We pick up our bags and run up to
the regiment. Right. Mm-hmm. What year was that?
2007.
Yeah. When you went, did you go to RIP or RASP?
RIP.
So RIP was something that predates RASP, the 3-week selection course, which was more just, just get through it, just survive, don't quit. To where now it's a little bit different. You have some of that, but we train them a little bit better now. But what a lot of people don't realize, all other MOSs, when you're done with RIP, you go to a Ranger battalion, right? Or you or stay there at regiment or whatever. The medical, that's when your training really starts, right? Yes. And you go to that. Can you speak a little bit about what that path is for a medic? Because it's pretty intense.
Absolutely. We stay in a training status for 6-7 months. You have at that time we had a pre-SOCM where you're taking tests, and you didn't want to go down to JFK, the schoolhouse at Fort Bragg and fill out. So if you weren't doing good with these tests, then you could get removed from the regiment in that little training status that we were there for like about 6 months.
Yep.
And then once we head down, we spend another, at the time I think it was 9, maybe 12 months. We spend 12 months down at Fort Bragg learning our trade. And
yeah. So for some context for listeners, because I always get asked to explain the acronyms. So SOCM is Special Operations Combat Medic, right? So it's an extra layer of training for our medics. And you're in that, if you count basic training, you're in a training pipeline for almost 2 years in some cases, right?
That's it. I think on average, when I was coming through, it was 27, 28 months.
Yeah.
If you included pre-SOCM, the weights between.
Yeah. How was that? Was that challenging for you, all the SOCM stuff, or did it come pretty natural?
It came natural. I was I've always been I was blessed with a brain, right?
A big one. If you can see
exactly.
His dome.
That's the helmet on the battlefield. But it did come. It came pretty easy. College helped with that.
I was gonna say, I wonder if your pre-med stuff, helped out. Yeah,
the anatomy and all of that, which did not help me with time management.
Oh, right.
I would be out in Fayetteville,
yeah,
going back to my old ways.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it can be easy to do down in Fayetteville. So you finish all the medic training, assigned to 175.
That's it,
and then come to 175. Again, it's different getting ingrained into a medic in a Ranger company, right? It's just different. You got to earn some respect there. We got to trust you wholly with our lives, right? So what's that like? That first 6 months when you first got to a line company, what was that like for you?
Man, in that time period, I think we've gotten smarter since then.
Yes,
but
sure.
In that time period, when you showed up, I showed up in Herrera and Dalkey. They were gone.
Oh, yeah.
Right? And so I was hit with the reality, like, all that stuff I learned, this just got real. I'm going to have to use this.
Yep.
Rick Porter was on the mission. He was a medic that went through SOCM with us. I think we'd been there for like 2, maybe 3 months.
Yeah.
We just showed up and processed, and then Rick's flying out.
Yeah.
Anyway, with that, when we showed up, it was another shark attack for medics. And the reason why was we were privates.
Right. Yeah.
Right. We were privates. We hadn't earned the nickname Doc yet.
Yep.
And those guys that were Doc were beasts of men, and they were more intelligent. They were some of the most intelligent people I'd ever met.
You are dead on there. Yeah. So you get to the Ranger company, platoon lifestyle. What was it like when you earned the name Doc? So when you get called doc as a medic, that's a big deal. Like, you stop calling them by their rank, you stop calling them by their name. It's not, hey, Conaway. It's not, hey, expletive, whatever. It's doc. Where's doc? What's that like when you get that?
Oh man, that was I think it happens, and when it happens, you're so ingrained in the platoon and the brotherhood within that platoon that you don't really, where I'm working now at Fort Benning, I'm not called doc anymore.
Right.
And so now I've really picked up on how much I don't want to say enjoyed it, but it was like a level of respect that you don't see anywhere else.
Yeah.
And you start to understand, man, these guys weren't just doing this because they do it on movies.
Right.
But there was this trust that you'd earned, and this, I don't know, the guys, the best way I tried to explain it to someone was, our guys do a lot of crazy stuff because Doc's on the battlefield.
Yeah.
And Doc will run through a hell of gunfire because his guys, there's this trust that's just, it's hard to describe, that enables each party to do more.
Right.
Right? Because they're like, well, Doc's here. If I'm going to live, he can save me.
Yep.
If I can live, he'll save me. And at the same time, Doc's like, yeah, I can run across that because they're going to cover my back type deal. So,
yeah, it's a level of trust when you start calling a medic doc, right? It's just something about it. I can imagine you, because you're now the senior medic for all of Fort Benning. Mm-hmm. Probably you kind of missed that. I bet that part of it, the camaraderie, the brotherhood aspect, right?
Oh, absolutely. That transition from direct level leadership, the tactical level where you're directly influencing the people you work with, that transition to the organizational leadership.
Yeah.
That's probably the toughest transition I've ever experienced.
Yeah.
Because you signed up to do good for people.
Right.
And I would argue that we all, non-commissioned officers particularly, signed up to join the Army because we needed change.
Right.
Well, then we get to the Army, we get an organization like the 75th Ranger Regiment, and we get that change super quick.
Yeah.
Now we want to spend the rest of our career helping young guys make that change.
Right.
And I that's an observation I've seen since I've been at Fort Benning. Regiment does a really good job with the transition of boys to men.
Right.
And that was like their priority, their mission when I was coming through.
Right.
We're going to make you a good man.
Right.
All these other missions, we'll teach you that stuff.
Right.
But the hardest one is making you a man.
Right. Right.
And so, I'm lucky to have been in regiment. Moreover, to be a medic. I don't know if I could have been as disciplined, as quick as the 11 Bravo, the 13 series guys, right? I got a lot of leeway.
Yep.
But I was also expected to learn and apply a lot. So.
Yes, absolutely. So all those years that you spent in regiment, right? All the years that I spent in the regiment, we have seen some medical advancements on the battlefield that are second to none in any other conflict, right? If you just look at the numbers of casualties we've had over the years, if you would have put those same casualties in Vietnam or World War II, they'd all be KIAs, right? What's some of the most significant things you saw come out of the last 20 years in the medical field?
I know we have a lot of things that we do now, like with blood, but I would argue our system, Ranger Regiment system, and how our first sergeants, our commanders, even our battalion commanders are tied into that system, and it flows so well. So the ARFR and the private who have the Rolo bag, it's now a battle drill.
Yeah.
And so that system is why we've been successful.
Right.
Because if you just expected the medic to run up, draw the blood's not ready, right? And now we're minutes behind.
I think you hit on something there. It doesn't matter how good your equipment is. It doesn't matter, what you have or how good you are if everybody around you is not helping enable you to do it. And I think you're right. That's probably one of the biggest changes we've had is just you might be the primary medic, but there might be 3 other advanced first responders. Back in the day, we had EMTs. It was everybody knew how to care for a guy. So if you were working on another casualty and you couldn't get there for a minute, they could do it, right? So
yeah,
it's that's true. What about a technological thing? Is it the whole blood? You think the biggest thing we've ever seen? Could you briefly tell what that is?
The Fresh Whole Blood program, or Ranger Olo Titer program, it's given us the capability if we've taken cold stored whole blood out on target and we run out, and we have a casualty who needs blood, then what we can do is we can draw from someone who's already been identified as OLO titer. We draw their blood and we transfuse it into our wounded or our sick patient. That happened on August. I think it's August 16th, 2019.
Yep.
With Sergeant Davis.
Yeah.
And I mean, if it weren't for the blood, then
he wouldn't be here.
Ryan wouldn't be here.
Right. And for anybody who's kind of wondering what he's talking about, it's pretty simple. You can do a blood transfusion. I could give you blood right now from me to you in a combat environment.
Exactly.
Right. And it's phenomenal stuff. And it's little advances like that, and then having people have the knowledge of how to employ it that I think really makes a difference.
Yeah, and I think not to knock anyone, but there's small things that our communities progressed with, and the drugs, the treatment that we use for drugs, that I think are helping with PTSD on the back end. So when we go into surgery, the last thing you remember about the surgery is 10, 9.
Yeah.
And then you wake up and you don't remember that instance.
Yep.
So we're using some drugs on the battlefield that can accomplish that or help with that, so that this traumatic events, I don't want to say forgotten, right? But
minimized.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. So let's transition a little bit. I'll ask you the question I ask everybody to give me what's Zach's definition of vulnerability.
Ooh. I think it's the quality of being exposed emotionally, physically, right? Some would say it's a weakness,
right?
But I would say it's a quality, because I don't think there's anyone in the world that isn't vulnerable.
Right.
I believe there was one, right? And we crucified him, but not to go down that down that road. But so I think vulnerability is just your quality or the state of being exposed emotionally, physically, and just acknowledging your weakness.
Absolutely. Yeah, because I don't, like everybody that comes on, I don't think vulnerability is a weakness, but we all have weaknesses. And if you tell somebody some people reserve it, they won't ever say it. And in our environment, that can be catastrophic, right? If you have a weakness related to combat, but if you know it and I know yours and you know mine, I got your back, you got my back. So vulnerability is leadership, I think, is what was one of Don Barden said last week on the podcast, and I couldn't agree more. I mean, vulnerability is part of life. You either accept it and own it, or you don't, right?
Yeah, and I mean, to your point, when you said leading with vulnerability, you asked me on the podcast, I was like, man, I've never thought of it in that context. Yeah. But you're exactly right.
Right.
I don't think you can lead.
Yeah.
Without sharing or being exposed. Especially
you as a medic. If you've got a casualty sitting there and you're working on him, you've got to feel, I mean, you're in tune to what's going on, but there's some vulnerability there. Like, if I mess this up, his wife might not see him again. His mom might not see him. His kids might not see him again. Yeah. I mean, that's some vulnerability right there that you have to embrace as a medic.
And, if, in another context, just to pour into what you're saying there, like if a guy asks me what drug we need to administer and I don't know, I can't pretend, I can't fake it, because the drug I give him, I have to say, I don't know.
Yeah. Oh, that's a big part of vulnerability, is saying, I don't know.
Right?
Yeah, absolutely. So in combat, there are a few phrases we hear, suppressive fire, breach is set, clear and secure. There's one phrase that you never want to hear, and I as a leader never want to say, is get the medic up here or get doc up here. We have somebody down. Can you remember the first time that you got told that?
It was in training. And I won't speak to that one, because the lesson that I guess I can. In that training event, they were calling for a medic. And I don't remember who the first sergeant was. I remember Captain Fisher at the time being there. He was my grader. And the lesson to be learned, I kid you not, was not to go up the ladder. And I'm not making this up. Not to go up the ladder, because we were on that training site with a pond. It had all the cement buildings and whatnot.
Yeah. And you're talking physically go up a ladder, right?
Physically go up a ladder and get a guy that's been hit on the roof.
On the roof, yeah.
Well, then my first casualty set, when I say first casualty set caused by, projectiles, I'd had casualties, from people falling off ladders or, random disease, non-battlefield type injuries.
Yeah.
But my first casualty set was John Penny,
Oh yeah.
Nuppenberg, and the issue was we're climbing a ladder,
Yeah.
right? And we had Penny who climbed a ladder, and if it weren't for the intense training that we put our medics through, or that I was put through, there's no way I wouldn't have climbed that ladder.
Right.
And so it's hard to remember. I think we suppress, right? And because
We do, absolutely.
we're so busy, and like, I'm not going to grieve this because I
Right.
don't have time to grieve appropriately. I've got a mission tomorrow.
Yeah.
And so I don't think I recorded everything in a journal. Unless I had that journal here, I'd probably misspeak to the issue, what everything that happened. But I do remember in that very instance, like, I was so well trained that I was actually like questioning myself.
Uh-huh.
I'm about to do this,
You're in a flow state.
and then I'm coming on net and asking Captain Fisher at the time, "Hey, I'm going to do this," and he's like, afterwards, he was an empowering man when it came. He was very hard on us.
And this is when Penny was there, or the training?
This was when he was shot.
Yeah, yeah. So Penny was killed. He was a medic that was KIA. And what year was that?
2010.
Yeah, 2010. And so you were the medic treating the medic.
Yes.
So that's like the nightmare scenario.
Well, it was nightmare because Nuppenberg was our EMT.
Yeah.
Penny was our medic. And then you got Fisher, who got shot in the back as well.
Yeah.
All because we were climbing on the roof.
Yep.
The high ground.
And we've changed a lot of things based. I mean, hard lessons learned is how you change anything in life. That's fortunately, I've never had to say that in combat. I've never had to say get the medic up here, right? Because of something that bad. I've been blessed, really. I think and somebody watching over me and the boys, but it's something you don't want to hear, and it doesn't matter where you are in the formation. It changes the atmosphere of what's going on a target when you know that they're treating one of your own, right?
Oh, that was probably the biggest lesson learned there. I had some triage lessons that I needed to learn. I've got a brother down, but I'm focusing on chest compressions because John's dead.
Yeah.
Let's be honest. I wasn't doing it for the reason that everyone was looking in.
Yeah.
Right. But I started to acknowledge like everyone who should be facing out, pulling security because we're under attack.
Yeah.
Is like, that's their main guy. That's Doc.
Yeah.
I haven't earned, I wouldn't say I haven't earned Doc yet.
Yeah.
They're calling me Doc, but I'm not
Yeah.
Doc.
You're not Doc Penny.
No.
Yeah.
And so when they're looking in, I've got guys asking, "Hey, how's Doc Penny? How's Doc Penny?" after we evacuate, right? And I started to understand what you were talking about. In those instances, you can really control the atmosphere and present this relaxing state just with how you talk.
Yeah.
Like over comms, if you're the breathing heavy and I can't gain everybody else is breathing heavy and they can't gain their composure, right? So I messed up in that scenario. And Major Work, you remember?
Oh yeah,
great man. Major Work asked me a question. I yelled at him, and that's when I picked up on everybody like looking in.
Yeah,
like, I need to calm down.
Yeah. Slow down. I've seen you get worked up before. Sometimes we've all had to tell Zach to calm down at some point in his life. But that's what makes it. I mean, that's what makes us who we are. I think. Yeah. So all your time in uniform, right? What was your most challenging day, right? What was the day that you still think about or look back on in uniform that you're currently still in that was just the most challenging part of it so far?
There's two.
Yeah.
One has to do with I come back from a deployment of 7 months, and my newborn son, who was loving on me before I left, right? I come back, he doesn't recognize me, scared to death of me.
Yep.
And it wasn't because I was being mean. I mean, this was day one, right? And for the next 2-3 weeks, my son still didn't know who I was.
Yeah.
And so that made me really question like what I was doing and why I was doing it. That was, from an emotional standpoint, that was probably the toughest day I had.
Yeah.
But from an emotional and physical standpoint, there was an instance where me and my mid-level rank as an E7, one of my guys, I told him we would give him time off. Right. And we got like 6 months prior, we got this individual, his pass, and it was for a wedding for his brother. But the first sergeant and the commander they revoked his pass.
Yeah.
Right? Like 2 weeks prior to a wedding. And that day, it was probably the biggest professional dilemma I've been in.
Yeah.
Right? Because you don't want to be the guy that falls on your sword for everything.
Right. Yeah.
Right? Because then everybody will want you dead.
Right.
Eventually. Right?
Exactly.
But on that day, I was so angry. You know, the Southern upbringing, not much different than you in New Mexico, right? Like thick as thieves. Like that made me want to fight some higher ranking individuals. And I learned a ton from it.
Yeah.
But I lost, unfortunately, because of my chain of command, I lost the respect. That was the day, I would say, that I started losing respect from this talent that I mean, this guy was the talented dude.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
If there was anyone I wanted to do right by.
Yeah. So. That's so what I think is interesting in what you just said there, right? Is both of those things are you serving others, right? You serving your family and failing in your mind, right? Partially. And then you making a promise that you weren't able to follow through for one of your reports or subordinates. And I think that just gets lost sometimes on our A-type personalities and our driven and our everybody I know, they're service. They just want to serve and make people better. Most people, So I always find it interesting when I ask that question because I always get a different answer. And in most cases, like most people, it's not the combat stuff. It's not when somebody died because you were at your best during that moment, right? You gave everything you had. It's when something was out of your control that you couldn't handle that really just you dwell on it, right? It's very interesting. We're an interesting group. You mentioned your wife and kids. For the listeners, the medic life, you deploy, you come back, and then you basically deploy inside the States to keep up all the medical training that you have to keep up. So it's double challenging on the medics in the formation. How's your wife handled that all over the years? The kids, how is that?
I'm going to blush a bit. Most of the men who know me know Sarah. And when I get introduced, they'll say, this is the angel that married Doc, right? So she gets introduced first, and most people are like, Doc, we have no idea how you got who you got, Sarah. Yeah. How she deals with it, I mean, we've been so blessed with the community here, in particular, and then the community. I mean, it really is the community. Our wives, I would argue, are probably. I wrote a paper. Right, a speech. It was actually a speech, and in this speech, I said, like, the sacrifice isn't born of the men who are doing the job; it's the families that sacrifice. Because I mean, seriously, if we were single, I think it's a single man's game, right? Yeah. If we were single, me and you would probably do it till we die.
Right. Yeah. Or we'd already be dead, probably.
But exactly.
Yeah.
And for those that are dead, they were doing what they loved, and I think that's an honorable way to go. So
absolutely.
That's a hard way to look at it. Yeah, I would love to have them here, but I'm so happy they died the way they did.
Right.
And I say all of that with the family aspect of it. Our women and our children. I mentioned what I went through with my son.
Yeah.
Right. Those are the guys. Those are the guys and gals that are making the kids. When I say guys, but they're the ones that are making the sacrifice.
They are.
And to be honest with you, if it weren't for the community, like. If you've got a bunch of people willing to sacrifice, it's kind of like us. We live off of that, being in the trenches and looking down the trenches and be like, yeah, this sucks. You know what I mean? That's that's the moment that you're like, man, this is what I signed up for.
Yes.
I don't know why we're that way.
Yeah.
But I think it's the same with our wives. They are looking down that trench line and there's other good wives.
Yeah.
Right? Like Jennifer Hartine, your wife.
Yeah.
Graham's wife, right? So they look down that trench line and they're like, okay, and it's that sinew plus the church that they're in that holds them together. So
yeah, you're right. Our wives are definitely better than us. That's why, not any offense when I say I hate when I'm with my family and people say thank you for your service to me.
Yeah.
And I say thank you. I'm happy to serve, but I'm doing what I love, right? Tell my wife thank you for her service and my kids who had to do all this without me for 5 years of deployed time. That's the real challenge, So, and you've been there too. You've been the guy that's in the room and your wife introduces you, and you're like, you're the guy, you're the husband that we've never seen before, stuff like that. So yeah, they are something else. So, you and your wife, what's the key to success there? How long you been married now?
We're going on 9 years.
Yeah.
Communication. I mean,
simple, but
it is.
it's the truth.
We just did a recent study on injuries in the battlefield. And it's hard to capture this, but I would argue that communication kills more people on the battlefield, good or bad,
Yep.
than anything. And I think in our own battlefields, like as soon as we cross the threshold, right?
Yeah.
That is a battlefield, and poor communication is going to get someone killed.
Right.
Yeah, not physically, but figuratively speaking. And so we're more direct.
Yeah.
I know her love language. She knows mine.
Yeah.
We know that we need to dive back into it and that it's going to change over time.
Yeah.
But more importantly, the communication, like the nonverbal stuff.
Yeah.
Especially with kids. If I'm kissing Caroline before I kiss mom, that sets a poor precedent.
Yeah.
Just there's small things. And an old man once said to me, "Have you ever been bit by an elephant?" I'm like, "What are you talking about, old man?" And he was like, "But you've been bit by an ant, haven't you?" And I was like, "Man, yeah, I have." He's like, "Small things matter."
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. And so,
Right.
bypassing the kids to kiss mama, that matters.
Yeah. That's vulnerability, right?
Yeah.
Opening up and saying when you're wrong and saying when you think they might be wrong. So that starts the conversation and communication, right? I agree. Communication is key to everything in life.
Yeah.
Really. And it's really key inside of a marriage, right? And you have to have 3 kids.
Yeah.
What are the age ranges there?
We're 3, about to be 4. So it'll be 4, 6, and 8.
4, 6, and 8. Okay. So how's that? I know my own struggles deploying back and forth all the time and leaving the kids. How did you handle it? How did they handle it?
So I've kept a journal for the majority of my
Smart. I wish I'd have done that.
career. And when I had my son, like the Army, I needed the Army more than the Army needed me.
Absolutely.
Moreover, I needed regiment more
Yeah.
than regiment needed me.
Yeah.
And, I drew some conclusions over time, like, the beret doesn't define the man, but the man defines the beret type deal.
Yep.
And in this journal, as I've been writing in it, as soon as we had Gabriel, I was like, this is really important. So I write to him.
Right.
Right. And the reason why I write to him is he'll have a story of why I
Yeah.
left. I want him to know the why. And, there's a lot of heartfelt stuff in there, but there's also some stuff in there that I'm proud of.
Right.
Particularly like him, if I can leave and tell him. There's those moments where it crosses your mind. You're like, man, I told him to take care of his family or take care of our family.
Yeah.
And I'm talking to him on the phone that week. He's like, "Hey, Dad, I'll be sure to take care of the girls."
That's good. Yeah.
And so it's those moments that like promote this like pride in me
Yeah.
where I'm like, man, yeah, you're getting it.
You're getting it. And you're right. I've had some of those as Jackson got older, in my last few years, those intentional conversations I had with him before I'd leave and go, "Hey, you're the man of the house now. You take care of mom," knowing full and well he's not going to do it, right? But just that conversation alone, you can see that something switches in his mind and he thinks, okay, Dad's leaving. I've got to step up to the plate and help out. And they remember that. It sets it, and it goes back to just communication, right?
Yeah.
Doesn't matter how old they are. You got to try to keep that communication. I think it's amazing that you keep a journal all this time. That's going to be something to look back on, in 20 years when you're in the rocking chair.
Yeah. The plan is to put it in Gabe's like hope chest.
Yeah.
With his guns that he'll be handed down to me, and hopefully I don't have to open it up ever again.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. You've moved out of the 75th, right? You're over there at MCO, Maneuver Center of Excellence, doing the medic thing. How was that transition out of the regiment? Was it a big mindset shift? Was it a big shift for you personally? Like, what did you? You're still being successful. What does it take when you leave something like that to go do something new, a transition like that?
Oh, that's a great question. I think the Army got it wrong when they did the leadership acronym. I think H should be humility, not honor. I think honor is the byproduct of being loyal, being, duty bound. If we walk through leadership, I think the H though they got wrong. It's not honor, it's humility, and I think humility is the key to success.
Right.
Especially as you transition from a unit where there's so much talent, but moreover, there's so many good people.
Right.
Right. We're still able to shape people. Right. And that transition that I was talking about earlier, where I literally grew up in 1st Ranger Battalion. I became a man in 1st Ranger Battalion. That's happening for these Army guys in the general population force later because
Right.
they're not getting the focus.
Right.
And so humility in the sense of, hey, regardless of your rank, we need to focus on that
Right.
before we focus on any of the staff work.
Right. And I think you're right. Humility is a great piece. It can be too humble, right?
Oh,
I've
yeah.
seen guys leave the regiment who have great leadership acumen, but they don't take it with them when they leave, right? They regress inside of the shell. They're respectful, but they don't lead like they could. They don't lead with vulnerability, lead with their humility and no. So there's a balance. Anything's a balance, or the pursuit of balance anyway, right? So I don't know. Are you trying to come back into the regiment at some point, or is that ship sailed? What do you think?
I would if they'd let me.
Yeah. It's a timing thing at this point. It's really what it is with you. So if you don't come back and never put that tan beret on again, right? That scroll. What was that time that you did have in the organization? What does that mean to you?
Oh man, I wasn't prepared for this question. This is where I learned that being a good family member will make you one heck of a ranger, and being a good ranger won't make you a good family member.
Right.
And so it's the foundational knowledge I needed as a kid or as a boy, a young man, whatever you want to call it, to become a man. I'm so eternally grateful for the good times and moreover the bad.
Yeah.
Because I needed the bad.
Right.
More than I did the good. The good enabled me. It gave me more of an ego. Those bad times, though, they broke me, made me humble.
Yeah.
And so when I look back on it, I'll remember it as a place where I found my cornerstone.
Right.
And I started to build a house off of it.
Right. Yeah. The regiment will humble you. Just as soon as you think you got it figured out and you're starting to move out, the regiment it finds a way to recenter you and say you're not what you think you are, right? And that's what I love about the place. And that when you left or I'm leaving, it keeps going, right? And some people don't like that. They're not recognizing me. It's a thankless organization. Has to be, right? That's the job. It's to go out there and fight and win our nation's wars. So they can't look back in the rearview all the time. And they do as best they can to honor traditions and past, but they got to be moving forward with something I really like about that organization.
I couldn't agree more.
So if you could go back, how long you've been in the Army? 16 years?
Almost 15.
15 years. Go all the way back. Private Conaway, right? And you could think of it for Private Conaway, the medic, or the new medic that's sitting there right now in those barracks 30 miles down the road about to go into RAS. What advice would you give both of you?
Go harder. I mean, we were pushing the limits, right? I think there was something in my gas tank. I pushed them as hard as I could early on, but I would want to go. My advice would be go harder. And by go harder, like there were instances like I went to jail while I was in 1st Ranger Battalion. Not just jail, but Forsyth County Penitentiary while I was in North Carolina for drunken debauchery, right?
This is why you're in regiment?
Yeah. And I wouldn't trade that moment because there was some maturation that happened after spending some time in a cell with a murderer that I needed. So I wouldn't change that. I would say go harder, but not in the sense of partying.
Yeah.
But, what Big Sarge, what Platoon Daddy was telling us to do.
Yeah.
Train harder.
Yep.
All that stuff.
I think you're right. This is what I love about Zach. He says what he's feeling at the moment, anytime. Doesn't matter your rank, the situation, he tells you what he's feeling. And I know what you mean by go harder. You don't want to look back and say, if I would have only, I had 10% more and I didn't do it. And you didn't do it, that eats at you, right? It will eat at you because I can think of moments right now when I had that extra 10% and for some reason I didn't give it, right? And I can think back of those times I gave the 110% and I love them, right? Those are some of the greatest moments.
And they might have been even ended with failure, right?
Absolutely.
I'd say go harder. And it's all because you were doing it along guys who were pushing it. Yeah. I didn't even know I was capable of some of the stuff I was capable of.
Right.
Until I got to regiment.
Right.
And that's because they made me push harder. Right. And so that would be my advice. These guys are going to push you hard. I want you to try and go harder. Go till you pass out type thing.
Yep. And I think a lot of guys, they self-select in regiment And then regimental guys, they'll self-select out of an education or a job position because they don't understand it. They don't take the time to cultivate the emotional intelligence and the humility and the vulnerability. So you can always, if you fail, it's okay, right?
Well, I've always said, as a medic, we got trained to failure. You never had a good AAR.
Right.
Right? And so I've always, it kind of cultivated within my theories, my own, like, the way I viewed medicine. If you're not failing, you're not trying hard enough.
Right.
The problem is in regiment, the word failure, oh man, it is so frowned upon.
It's a dirty word.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah.
And sometimes leveraging failures, right?
Yeah.
To show a command team, like, hey, we can't do this.
Yeah.
Because if we do it, I'm going to fail over here, and that's unacceptable.
Right.
So,
Absolutely. Well, Zach, I appreciate you taking the time on this morning to come down and sit down and have a conversation with me. It's been fun. I appreciate all you've done. Like, from me to you, thank you for your service. Thanks for all you've done as a medic. That's a challenging job that I'm glad I never had, right? And I know the people who are medics, that they love it. They absolutely love what they do. And we wouldn't be where we are today without where the medical field in the regiment has advanced. We'd have a lot more names etched on walls if it wasn't for you guys. So I thank you for what you've done and the training you've given and the training you continue to do. You continue to serve, and I appreciate it. And thanks for coming on here.
Yeah, thank you, brother. I love you like a brother. I do. Thanks, man.
All right.